The more you try to keep me down and keep my head above the water, you can never hold me down. The more you try to block me out, that's where I kick the wall down. You can never hold me back. The more you try to put me out, the more I'll be blazing, it's too hot. The more you try to put me in the dirt, increase my work, the expert. You see the hunger in the eyes of a survivor. Swallowed my pride.
Hey everybody, it's another beautiful Tuesday. Welcome to Pinecase. I'm Cleisha Campbell, also known as Casey from Pinecase. Man, there's some interesting stuff going on, and Canadian Music Connection is one of those places that's been happening for a while. I've been checking it out since maybe not since the beginning, but I've definitely been like trying to stay on track on what's going on. My boy Jason, and I'm going to say your name without saying it because everyone butchers my first name, but I just want to be like, oh, like Froelich?
Yes, there we go. You aced it.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out and doing all this stuff. I know that it's been a hot second since we talked about it originally. But yeah, I absolutely appreciate your time. So thank you.
You know, I feel all that time that went into talking about it just made this moment right here even better.
Oh, that's deadly.
I've watched a few of your podcasts now. My favorite of which had to be the Moshery interview. That was awesome. He's one of my longtime hip hop idols.
Oh yeah.
Before I go all spongy and freaking teddy bear and fanboy out here, I'm gonna say that like he pioneered hip hop. Really,
Absolutely.
He did. He helped on the forefront. And old man, if you're listening to this, there's a reason I respect you.
Yeah, man. He's one of those people that like he's such an icon, right? He's such an icon to like the West Coast hip hop scene, but when you know Canada hip hop as well, it like Sweatshop Union is no
he influenced a lot of the OGs out here. He really did.
Absolutely. I'm gonna tag him in this right now. I love that dude. He's such a beauty.
Heart of gold and a great performer.
Yeah, he's deadly. Wicked. Who else are some of the people that inspire you? Like, you know what I mean?
Oh wow. I know you realize that list is long. Okay, so hip hop artists, I'm gonna give a shout out to Jazz Mills and Jeremy Fortin. They form a duo out on the island called Vice City Soldiers.
Oh, okay.
And Jer has, even before I started in music, Jer has been a big influence. Oh, damn, there's the emotions. That's the love that goes into the hip hop scene. He's been not just a good friend in music, he's been a solid brother, and he's always been someone that's been there even when I'm being a shithead in life. And he's always been the one to go, hey, what are you doing, dude? Is this really benefiting you? So for that, I got to give shouts to Jer because he's always had my back.
Deadly.
Other influences in the DJ world, I'm going to have to say my biggest early age influences were probably DJ Tiesto, DJ Rankin, and a duo called Pino and Loa, but they're really new. And shout out to those boys. I had my second year at Valhalla Fest, which is a local rave in Terrace here, and I got to see them live and drop a demo on them right after their show, which was kind of fun because I wasn't really expecting it.
Oh, isn't that amazing when you like run into somebody that you appreciate and you're like, wait, and it's like a human type of moment, right?
Yeah, it's really it humbles you, especially when you come from a place where I came from, where it was darkness most of my life and constantly trying to overcome battles that you never knew if you were really going to overcome.
Sound like maybe we kind of grew up similar.
So the Dead City Saint refers to very much my time in Edmonton when I was addicted to crystal meth and cocaine. Hence why I refer to the place my character is from as Dead City, Deadmonton.
Yeah, Deadmonton.
It was all a big influence. I at the time was a devoted wicked clown who actively wore the hatchet and supported Violent J and Ye2 Dope of Insane Clown Posse. Huge respects out to them and what they do.
My kid's gonna lose his mind. He literally just tried to introduce me to ICP like 2 minutes ago, and I was like, "Get out of here!" Like, what do you introduce me to insane clown posse? Like, what are you 10? He's like, "Mom." Like, well, come on, man. They've been out for a while. Like, you know.
And the fact that Violent J is still bumping out Joker cards, that's amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. On to the origin story that we've all been waiting to hear. I started watching DJs in the local roller dome in Prince George when they used to do the all-night roller skate nights. You want to talk about going into the ass end of the 80s and weird fads that don't exist anymore. They weren't kidding. Roller parties were a thing back then.
Yeah, man.
So we used to always go out and get high on mushrooms as teenagers and go watch the local DJs throw down at the roller rink. And eventually I got to hang out with one of the opening acts in one point, and this fueled my later love to work in the entertainment industry, because I started messing around with their decks and they're like, "You have a natural rhythm. You should consider doing this yourself." And you know, years went by, I went through my shit, was a foster kid in care, went through some pretty heavy shit, and it wasn't until I was 21 where I actually considered maybe doing music as a healer. Because by that time, that was around the era that I was just talking to you about, where we had a Christian prince growing up, or a Christian priest growing up, who was outed for kiddie porn.
Right. Okay.
I am gonna say this: there is a big trigger warning in a lot of the stuff I talk about, because, as we say, nothing heals by keeping it in the background.
No.
And just for anybody who may listen, if things get sensitive, I apologize.
You don't have to apologize, man. I don't know, and just to like make you feel maybe a bit more comfortable, but I started this with like a personal, testimony of everything that I've ever done, and I thought if I just put it out there from beginning to end, then no one can ever question, like my credibility or whatever.
The facts are there, yeah.
The facts are already there. I've already talked about it, so I just quickly typed up like topics are heavy tonight so that people can make the choice whether they want to like stick around or not. That's their choice. But the reality is that you're right. If we don't talk about it, then we can't battle stigma. And it's a massive part of like, our mission statement at Pinecase, right? I mean, it's a Pinecase because we're trying to keep people out of them.
Out of the pine box. Yes.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And being someone who came from a generation that really still tried to push it under the bridge, I really like what you guys do here. It's amazing. And it takes two of my most favorite things and combines them together. And we need more people talking about it and engaging, because there is still a very big stigma. I just got told the other day that when I was having a breakdown because I found out that my aunt was not doing so well, that I wasn't allowed to show emotion in public because I'm a male and I should be better than that. And I was told this by a very, very well-known elder here in town. It just made me stop and go, whoa, these are people who have fought colonization from the very moment they were awake and alive. And to hear that come out of them, it kind of made me realize the generation gap between now and our parents' age.
Yeah, because we weren't allowed to talk about it. They're not allowed to talk about it. And I've been talking about this tough love thing for a while now. Like, it's how do you I don't, because I'm not here to like break generational curses or break chains or anything like that. Like, you know what I mean? How do we just like start new links, right? Like, how do we just
honestly been privileged enough to break a few, not really trying to, and the people have been very gratifying about it.
Yeah, deadly.
The gentleman that I mentioned before that I had to stop from running into traffic recently, just reached out to me this afternoon and offered me a job and was like, I'm really glad you're my friend. I might not have made it past that night if it wasn't for you following me after the carnival. And to hear that meant more to me than the bitching I did while I was trying to take care of him and he was just being a drunken buffoon.
It's, you know what, though, like that's where the love's at, right? When you're like, listen, we're just gonna stick through this, it's all good. Like
it wasn't about making me happy. It was about keeping him alive and happy.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so run this back for a second. Let's start at the very beginning here, because we've already thrown it out there that like we're going to start with foster care and some elders that you want to touch on and like talk about relations to, and ones that you want to break relations with. But I actually really want to hear more about this story. Like, what exactly happened with your homie, if you don't mind talking? Because when you started talking about it behind it, I was like, let's go live real quick. Like,
I'm gonna name drop, even though I shouldn't, but he was a good teaching point for me. Mike is doing well. He got his job back and he is going on the road with them. I'm helping him through a bit of a court case to end the false charges that were laid against him, and I got a good lawyer that's helping him get on, or he's got a good family lawyer that's helping him get on the bandwagon and get this shit dealt with, because even though he wasn't charged, they put him on a list, and that's bullshit. If he's not charged, why the fuck is he on a predator list?
Right.
For something he didn't do. So they're rectifying that in the judicial system right now.
Right. But like false charges and false accusations can tear a person's life up. Like, no wonder why he was talking about getting into traffic, man. Like,
and I'm using him as a healing point right now for myself, because I used to cut as a teenager. Because I felt inadequate. I felt the world didn't deserve another fucking idiot. These are all things that I've gone through emotionally and felt at one point in my youth. I was a teenage alcoholic from the time I was 13 till the time I was not a teenager anymore.
Right.
It's really funny because old me now at 37 can go party at a rave, do my thing in a night, and I'm fine the next day. I'm not craving anything. There's no addictive personality because I've realized my worth in that sense. And I won't ever allow myself to go back to what I was.
Do you think that addiction and things like that come from like self-worth over being selfish?
I can definitely see it going either or, depending on the scenario and how it plays out for each individual. I consider the act of suicide very selfish myself, because you're not thinking about the people you're leaving behind and how that your loss would affect them. You're only thinking about how you're feeling.
Which is interesting, because I don't look at it like that at all. I look at it like you are responsible for yourself, and if you're not interested in participating anymore, like that's your opinion. Right?
Well, I am totally pro-choice at that same time, which is kind of weird. Like, I believe you should be able to dictate, like a lady dictates bringing a life into this world. I feel they should have the same ability to take a life out of this world. It's the natural animal way of life. If you look at the scale of animal to human, we are still mammals, and I feel sometimes the human race forgets we still have animalistic urges. And I do believe freedom of choice should definitely be up to that individual.
So then why take it away from people, like when it comes to suicide? Like, what I mean, obviously there's, it does leave people behind and things like that. But when we're talking about like,
it's funny because me and Mike just had this conversation too. He stopped me, and after I pulled him back to the sidewalk, he looked at me and he was like, why? Why would you do that? If I'm truly content on wanting to go, I'm going to find a way. And I'm like, that's the thing. I knew he wasn't ready. He was just hurting and he was lashing out.
Yeah,
I can tell the difference. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No. It's all good. I was just gonna say, I think that it brings up a good point. A lot of the time when people do these things like in public places or they reach out for help, like that is them asking for help, whether it's the way that we want them to ask for help or not, right? It's the people that aren't doing the things out in public that, raise cause for concern, but you can't control that because we're not aware of it, right?
And I'm very much aware of the difference in personality between a person who actually wants to end it and a person who is distraught and not sure what to do and just acting out, more or less. And that was very much an acting out because I feel like I'm alone and he needed to be reassured that he wasn't alone. The moment I did that, he stepped right off himself. He was like, holy crap, what am I doing, dude? Like,
Yeah.
very, very open. He needed somebody to snap him back to that reality, and me grabbing him by the scruff of the neck at 50 years old, I guess it did it for him.
Well, good for you for being a good friend. You're also not alone right now. Your comment section's like lit right up. I just wanted to take time to say,
Yeah.
hey to everybody. Bradley is no joke. He comes through all the time, and
Yes, I
Mel,
see him often on
boys.
your show.
Yeah, they're all in there saying hi. I haven't popped them up on the screen yet because I didn't want to interrupt what you were saying. Some pretty heavy stuff, but yeah, the boys are all here. Thank you for coming through, guys. Much love to everybody. I know that these are like kind of they're sensitive topics because they're things that everyone deals with, but not everybody talks about, right? And a lot of the times we get stuck in situations where, like you were out there helping your buddy, but then what did you do to make sure that you were cool after that? Because that's a lot. Like,
I actually have a Buddhist gentleman that's local here in town that sat down and did a meditation with me afterwards. I was about to say that earlier too. So my family is 7th generation pagan witches.
Wow.
We are all light healers and light bringers in our family.
Wow. So what goes on, like, not to be ignorant, but what was happening with this full moon stuff last night? Because I don't I'm not even about all of that, even though like my background might tell a little different story. But
energies are a very real
thing.
and something I think we as humans need to definitely learn more about because our bodies rely on energies very much so. You look at the base root of emotions. Where do emotions come from? They come from an energy inside you.
Yeah,
and I realized at a very young age that I had the ability to talk to family members that had been long since gone. From the time I was 12 to the time I was 19, my grandma used to sit on the bed and do the prayer that she did with me when she was alive, the good night prayer, which was a Christian prayer to Jesus. And one day,
hold on 1 second. Okay, sorry. No, go ahead. I got a question though. I got like 5 questions.
Oh, shoot.
Sure a lot of people do.
Go ahead.
But like, I feel like this is maybe you can enlighten me a little bit. Where do we draw the line between like visions and experiences and like psychosis? Because
that's actually a very common question too. And sometimes I do believe it's hard to draw that line because a lot of people tend to lean on, well, this guy can't really do that. Like the naysayers, so to speak. So I've asked myself often that question, and I cannot come up with a successful answer that satisfies my brain.
Right. Like, do you feel like because the people use?
I feel that if you are known for psychosis in your family, that maybe they should screen if you do plan to be any sort of spiritual person or leader or anybody who deals with those spiritual demons on a regular, because I'll tell you, we are not alone on this earth.
But what if it's the same thing? Like, what if we're like trying to dummy all of these people down, but they're like actually having spiritual encounters?
And
because don't we like use substances in a way to like manipulate kind of like those spaces,
the energies,
like, right? Like people, and not to like, I don't want to get too heavy into like, heroin is poppies because, well, it is poppies, or like, cocaine.
Well, okay, it's funny you mentioned that because the old Mayan civilizations used to drink a tea that was made from the poppy seed, which was highly hallucinogenic, and it was very much similar to the natives' mezcal, which was a hallucinogenic tequila.
Right. And so, like, where is that line? Like, are people that are, maybe not utilizing, but like abusing
I
the substances,
believe
like, are they just taking it to like the next level? Like, I'm
if
not
we
giving people like a pass on drug abuse. I'm just saying, like, sometimes when you see people down on the corner preaching all this stuff, I'm like, man, that sounds a lot like some of the things I've heard in a different setting. It felt different. Like when I was at the Mayan temples, walking around barefooted, grounding, none of that would be weird. But because it's like, off the corner of Homer and Davies or whatever, you look crazy. Like, do you think a lot of it has to do with setting?
stigma, it goes back to the stigma,
Right? Yeah.
very much. A city person will judge a person differently than the person who's grown up on the farm in the Hicks most of his life. I myself
Right.
was a farm boy, so I had a lot of time after school to sit in the bush and, study all these new things. And because we grew up in the late 80s, computers were just becoming accessible. So I was learning how to utilize information and find out information through a piece of technology.
Right.
I do believe that there should be a point where, again, if you're going to go into any sort of spiritualism or job that entails spiritualism, that you should definitely be screened for mental health, because from what I've gathered studying mental health in the years I've been alive, there are a lot of people that their last resort through their psychosis is to say they are having spiritual visions. They've heard or seen things, and it is very common in psychosis for them to lean towards the spiritual.
Right.
Why? I don't know if they're actually feeling it. Sometimes, from what I've dealt with, I do feel that they're sensing something, whether that be another worldly energy or something that's an energy a little more close to the living world.
Right. And then as soon as it becomes like a negative thing, fellowship is massive in the recovery scene. So it's like, I feel like they're too close to not be, at least entertained as the same conversation, right?
Well, and it's hard for me to sit there and, having followed the rabbit hole and knowing what the government has caused behind closed doors, it's a nasty thing. And people seem to forget that the government has been forefront to some of our biggest scientific advances, but to get there, they had to do some really heinous things to living people.
Yeah.
And I feel that one of those things was to shun mental health and start getting everybody on the stigma road, which was, oh, hide it, push it down, don't admit that. You're a man, you're supposed to be tough.
Right.
Well, some of the most creative and best men I've ever met in my life in the last 5 years are vulnerable as fuck.
Yeah. Well,
And
artists talk about it all the time. They're like, in order to write that song, I had to put myself in this place, right? I had to like expose myself to the world and not.
Eminem just came out with an interview which his new album was amazing. It was his first concept album ever in his career, and people hated on it. But if you listen to it song for song for song, as you're supposed to a concept album, he was telling a story, man. He was talking about his life and where he went with it.
Right.
He is the rap god. Like, he got that title for a reason. He was a little white boy that everybody laughed at. Dre even said it himself. He didn't think Eminem was going to impact the world like he did. And when he did, he was like, holy fuck, this white boy's got skills.
Well, and not to say that like the urban culture didn't have lyricists, because they absolutely did.
Vanilla Ice.
I
There
mean,
was
100%. Yeah, no. I mean, like, aside from like white dudes, I mean, but like what I'm getting at is like, Eminem was the first artist I ever listened to that inspired me to pick up a thesaurus and understand that
what you're saying.
100%, and that I could use different words in certain ways. And like, because I remember being in English class and being just like bored out of my mind, but until listening to Eminem, which was like so aggressive and forceful, and like, it was like uncomfortable
In your face.
But then when people would talk about it in interviews, they were like, oh, so smart. He's so like in tune with a dictionary and a thesaurus. And I was like, what the heck's a thesaurus? Like, like this is amazing, right? And so he made language interesting again. Not to say that there hasn't been other people, because there absolutely has. There's lots of giants that are, maybe not white, but him specifically was the one that kind of stuck out. And maybe because he was white, that's why we all remembered it, right? Because
he set the bar for every other white rapper after him.
Well,
and not to just get hung up on the color thing, but he did it in a time where color was and race was still racism was still a big thing.
I think it's more I think that the race thing is actually, I feel like we've regressed, to be honest. I feel like we were more comfortable with black and white culture being near each other than we are now. The same way that like sexuality, like I felt like we were, and I can't speak for, everybody obviously, but like
my brother-in-law, Connor, the most amazing African-American I know. And I give him crap every day because he's anti-racism supposedly, but the first word out of his mouth is embalm this, embalm that. And it's like,
but
dude.
but does that make him racist though? Like if he's a black dude and he's just talking to, or is he like South African?
He's South African.
Okay, so he's a white dude then.
But like it's like he's like, oh, I don't like it when other colors say it, but it's your favorite word, bro. It's the hypocrisy that gets me.
But don't you think we should then like take the seriousness out of the word? Like let the historical facts speak for themselves, but can't we just bring it back to being English again? Or like let it be
back to what the original term meant, which was not a hate.
I mean, like we don't have to take it back to that, but like can we just take the seriousness out of it? Because if a culture uses it in slang terms, and I already know people are gonna be like, you're talking to a white dude about that word, blah blah. I don't give a shit. The thing that drives me crazy is like, why do we give it so much credit? Right? So the same way is like taking away Jemima off the syrup. Like
that was stupid.
Why did we do that?
Stupid.
Right.
She was a staple in history who made her life building an empire for herself, and she got called racist because of the color of her skin. Like, what the hell, guys?
No, it was stupid. Just the same way that you can't wear mucklucks. But if white girls keep buying mucklucks the way they do Uggs, then those natives are
it becomes a culture fad.
Man,
oh my god.
It's the only way to create economy. Like it's
I get it. People have to have a market for what they sell, and people are a good market to sell things.
Do you think that people really want to like cut their target market out? No one's out there being like, I don't want to sell to this person. Tommy Hilfiger said one time that he didn't intend for his clothes to be worn by black people. Everyone was like, he didn't make clothes for black people. Well, black people sell blah blah blah. They represent it all the time in hip hop culture. And he was like, man, I didn't say I didn't make it for them that they can't wear it. I said that I didn't intend for them. That's not who my target market was. Am I stoked that they buy everything? Yeah. Am I worried about it? No. Was that my target market when I started? Absolutely not. Didn't even think it would be a thing. And people watched the Oprah Winfrey show and lost their fucking minds over it. And they're like, oh my God, if you're black, you can't wear Tommy Hilfiger. And I was like, I don't know if I watched that interview the same way that everybody else did. Like,
I'm just going to say this. The cancel culture is the biggest joke in society nowadays. Like, after watching Amber Heard try to destroy Johnny Depp, I think anybody who follows cancel culture should just duck and cover while they can.
Yeah, it's only going to be so long until we take it straight to the 90s and be like, nah, this shit ain't working no more. Because cancel culture.
We're sick of your opinion. We're going to have our own again. We're going to speak up like we used to.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's time to cancel culture. I can't stand that. It's so obnoxious.
Well, and a lot of it's very shallow reasoning, and there's no intellect behind their choices either.
Right. It's all like
Yes, it does. It very much does.
Yeah, Bradley's not wrong. The funny part is that like one person feels uncomfortable, and then they try and make everybody else feel uncomfortable, and then if we don't all jump on the bandwagon, then that also makes people feel uncomfortable, right? Because they want to be like part of a team or something like that. But
I find that comes from society's will to everybody wanting to fit in and be felt like they're important in life.
But that's the problem with these, like the fit in or fuck off mentalities or whatever, right? Like, and I'm guilty of it. We're all guilty of it, right? Like, I mean, I don't know. I processed cows for a little while for like an auction house, which a lot of people wouldn't believe about me, but there's a lot of that in that culture. Cowboy
My first farm job was a butcher shop that we had on the farm. Dad would we'd make all our own food right there.
Yeah, exactly. Right. But in that blue collar, sector, there's a lot of that like fit in mentality. And that's what's it's so funny because people think that, but I mean, I got hired and I showed up with like, I wasn't wearing Wranglers or anything like that. And no one even noticed. They're like, oh, whatever.
It was just the normal. Yeah.
Yeah. You here to swipe, make a paycheck? Yeah. Cool.
It was always hard having a grandfather who was part of World War I because I'm a culture kid and I love learning about other cultures. Yeah. That's where I feel great. My granddad was a full-fledged German right out of the war.
Yeah.
And on his deathbed, it was one of the most exhilarating conversations I had. He told me to bring in the kid that when I was 16, I brought a colored friend home and he almost killed him. He almost beat him to death, but he had a war flashback. And on his deathbed, he gave this kid a hug and said, "I'm sorry for everything I ever put you through as a youth." And he looked at me and he goes, "Kid, I never really wanted to alienate you or your friend, and I'm sorry that I didn't have the skills to come home from the war and know how to deal with what they brainwashed me with." And for the first time, he actually talked about the war. And I knew something was eating him growing up. He just, because he came back broken, he clammed up and didn't talk about it until he exploded, which was scary for a kid, right?
But don't you think that that kind of stuff happens all the time? Like we talk about people going postal, right? You hear all these things like, school shootings or people, there's like, I don't know what the fire was about, but there's like, big buildings going up in flames all the time, especially like I've been watching what's happening over.
For instance, the Columbine shooting. No one ever asked those kids what they were feeling. No one ever asked those kids how they felt. Like they just accused them of being broken and damaged. But all those interviews that were done with Roger Moore and everybody, not one did you see anybody ask those kids what they were feeling.
Well, I mean, do you remember? What you mean, Michael Moore?
Or Michael Moore, sorry.
No,
Roger Moore was James Bond.
I just remember that everyone was like mad about Marilyn Manson, and they're like, "Oh, like he's to blame for everything," blah 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 blah. And they're like, I don't know how exactly the whole thing went, but like, basically, Britney Spears had an answer to it, and Marilyn Manson had an answer to it, and Marilyn he was like, instead of telling them, why don't you ask them? And it was like somehow
right questions,
revolutionary, like holy shit. And it was and that I feel the same way, like, you know what I mean, we got to start asking and talking about things. We don't ask, like we got to get out of our own comfort zone and just start asking people like, "Man, are you cool?"
Judge less and speak more.
Like just talk about it. Right, like DJ Allgood, he's got a initiative, speaking of pew pew pew, he's got this initiative for a friend that he lost, MIA, was actually her name, but what a great name for an initiative. And he's just like, when I'm thinking about somebody, I just message them, like just send in some love lasers, just shoot them off a quick message or quick call. And I never really thought about it until then. And now, I mean, I probably drive people crazy, but like I don't post a lot of like my family stuff, but people in my like favorites or whatever, they get like a daily journal of me like every single day. Like, man, he just got a fade. Like, here's some photos, right? And like, how's it going? How are you doing? What are you guys having for dinner tonight? Like, what's good? And I don't expect everyone to turn around and be like, I'm having alphagettis or whatever. But I'm not scared to like love bomb people at all. Like, this is, you know what I mean? Like, what's up? What's happening?
The fact that people took that as a negative, I don't understand the reasoning behind it. And there were people that were posting, "Why would you love bomb somebody who doesn't deserve to have your love?" And I'm like, that's not what healing's about. You're not doing it because there's a purpose behind doing it. You're doing it because you know it's the right thing to do.
Isn't that ignorant, huh? I'm not trying to like talk negative to
No,
about
it
anybody,
really
but
is.
like, and the
See, and what I don't get is if you think back to culture in the early 80s and 90s,
Mhm.
and you look at TV and things, they have groomed us for what's about to happen with society, from TV to books to movies about science fiction that's going to happen. And you watch the second Back to the Future and look at the year that he has on the time machine. It's 2003, the year we're in right now.
right. Wait.
In things, in retrospect to things like science and how far we've come far as a civilization of people, but I still think there's more major things there to learn to help us continue evolving. The problem is we stopped challenging our minds in positive ways.
Well, but that's where like reading becomes important. Okay, but just hold on. Are you talking like? Do you think that there's like information in like what's the word I'm looking for? Like marketing strategies and like symbolism and things like that? Like, do you think that there's like, because obviously people pick like when I picked my logo, I picked it for a reason. And someone asked me the other day, they're like, "What is that?" And I was like, "Oh, it's someone's face with
Symbolism
like,
is in almost everything we do. It's even in our language. We would not have hieroglyphics without symbolism.
mm-hmm.
Even marketing, when you watch a commercial on TV, everything that goes on the commercial has a purpose and tells a story of something they're selling.
Right. Like
Even in movies and cartoons.
And colors too, right? Like people like they dismiss colors as like in a sense of importance, but when people use certain colors or things, like there's like moods and atmospheres that they're trying to create with it. Like,
I want to jump back to a bit of the beginning. You asked where my name came from.
Right, yeah.
I only got half of that explanation out before I sidetracked.
Yeah.
So the Dead City Saint was very Rastafarian based. If you look at my character, he's a little skeleton, a little voodoo skeleton, and the whole thing came into play because I'm a huge fan of the Rastafari culture, and I believe more of us in our generation need to stand the fuck up and fight for what we believe in. Too many of us have been silenced for so long that we don't know how to have a voice anymore.
So true. So true.
So the character is very much every bit of outspoken bluntness in me put into a visual.
I love it. And you know what's important about Rastafari culture specifically is like their only worship is the sun because it brings, nutrition and warmth.
They worshipped a god named Ra, who was the sun god.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
The same one that oh my god, Princess Pandora, but there was the Egyptians also revered Ra because he gave life.
Sun gave. Have you watched Zeitgeist or Zeitgeist?
Of course I have. When I was like 13 and it first came out.
Okay.
A very strong movie, and that had a lot of really good points.
Right.
So a lot of the major prophets in religion were shunned, but they turned out to be right when they told of an apocalypse. They're talking about now, it was actually a massive worldwide occurrence. And that's literally how we shifted into states, was the tectonic plates hit each other and collided. And each of those tectonic plates shifted, and each time it does that, it creates a giant tidal wave.
Right. And you know that. You're sitting on the Jean de Fuca, are you not?
Yes, I am. That scares me. You have no idea. Knowing what I know, that scares the ever-living shit out of me, knowing where I sit on the equator, in the world.
Right.
But yeah, let's go back to the music for a second. You'll as you get a chance to peruse my SoundCloud, you'll notice that a lot of my music, even though it's high bass party music, has a message behind it.
Okay.
There is and that outlining message is the human race has got to get it together. We're at a point now where we're about to hit the end of the Mayan calendar, and that's when the world is going to shift. So when they said the end of the earth, aka the apocalypse, erase the apocalypse part. The end of earth was actually the foretelling of the end of the Mayan calendar, which is the calendar we use on a day-to-day basis.
I thought the Mayan calendar ended in 2012. Not the same one?
Sometime recently.
Yeah, I lived with a Mayan lady for a little while, actually, and she taught me a lot of neat stuff. One, she worshipped, like, she used to talk to Mama Luna all the time while she was drinking tequila, eating raw oysters. The lady was amazing.
Old schooler.
Man, she was amazing. She also knew about shadow people without, like, participating in
So I strongly
that's not specific to that. But what she did tell me was, like, she said that it would be not necessarily the end of, like, there wouldn't be like an apocalypse, but it would be the end of like an era. And it was actually like a mindset and not like a massive devastation. And she told me this, like, I mean, long before
humans hyped it up and made it something it wasn't, so they could sell shit.
Yeah, totally. I mean, no more.
Come on.
No Mayan calendar.
Walking Dead
tapestries were sold more than then. Yeah.
Walking Dead. All these zombie horde freaking stories are really just telling the end of the Mayan calendar that was overhyped by the human race to sell crap.
Totally.
Don't get me wrong, I love Walking Dead, but we go back to what we were talking about marketing. Everything that happens has a selling point.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And that's what there has to be. Like, people are going to make money, and that's like what George Carlin was saying in Zeitgeist, right? Like, what does all this have to do with each other? And like the common denominator was like
the fact that he as a comedian could take real life and talk about it the way he did and make people laugh. Like, that guy had a crazy talent.
Genius. That man was genius. Apparently someone just recently took a bunch of his content and they like have a really good impersonation of him, like themselves or whatever. They sound like him, and they ran it through an AI program and had AI actually build a whole set. And it wasn't of any of his old stuff. It's a brand new George Carlin through AI
experience through the AI. Man.
And they said, like, if they had have not used his impersonation voice and had have actually used George Carlin's voice, which I mean they can totally do, but there was copyright issues, that it was like amazing how close it was. But the thing with George Carlin specifically is, like, he talked about things long before
they ever happened,
right? I mean, he's the closest to Nostradamus, in my opinion. And I don't want to say he was just a comedian, but he's an entertainer the same way that I think.
Look at Dave Chappelle.
Well, right, there's another one. Like, I think that we dismiss entertainers a little bit in the way, like, they're telling a story, right? Like, I don't know if they got an antenna or what they're tapped into to bring that information forward, but entertainers to me, they're like prophets, right? I'm like, man, where do you guys get this information from?
Look at The Simpsons.
Everything, this information. Yeah. And you have your own delivery system. Like, what? Like, you had a delivery system that works for the masses. Like, I don't know how else. I don't know what a prophet would look like in 2024 other than entertainers.
A normal person that's down on his luck on the streets.
Right?
When I hear the word prophet, when I hear the word prophet, I envision the old man with the sign that says the end of the world is coming. But I also think, you think of how many of the best intellectuals were deemed crazy and insane because they believe something way before its time.
But this goes back to psychosis. Like, how do you think that people that live in that space, like, that aren't necessarily dealing with psychosis, that are just so tapped into, like, that whatever that is? I don't have a name for it. I mean, much like you, I like, I read about all of them, so they're called a lot of different things. But
a lot of it is trust, believing in the heart, believing in the spiritual process. I don't think there is a real way just yet to define, unless you're watching this person have a breakdown and go through it.
But even people that are going through it, I mean, when you look at some people that are in church that are like having those moments, and I'm like, that looks uncomfortable. Like, but it's blissful, right? It's like, I don't.
Well, let's take that for a second. It's only uncomfortable because we've never dealt with it the way we're dealing with it now. Now that it's in our faces,
That's true.
Like, my sister out here, I just helped her through an abusive relationship, for example, and we all felt uncomfortable, and it took me forever. Are you familiar with the term psiotic vampire? They're
Is
very
that someone
similar
that,
to an
like somebody that like siphons energy, or like that
latches onto you, and one of the key people that hold this trace is narcissistic people. They will latch onto you, drain your energy till you can't fight anymore, and they will start abusing you.
Right. Yeah. But that's, again, like, it's funny because if you use different terms, it looks differently, right? As soon as you said that, I was like, oh, that must be something scary. But the reality is that, like, we all know people that they're like, man, that was soul sucking, or like, Jesus, dealing with that person today was soul sucking. And I'm like,
sayings like that. Take a second and look at the word. Spells have words. Spells and words have power. Why do you think it's called spelling?
Right. How literal,
They had to give it a name because someone a long time ago realized that the words we use hold power when they're said to the right person in the right way.
Right.
And when my aunt pointed that out to me, I almost had a brain melt. I was like, spelling. It's called spelling because spelling uses words and words have power.
That's right.
It was mind-blowing. I was like, wow, it totally made me think in a different way.
But it's the same. I mean, when you're like, oh, I'm feeling, every time someone says, how's your day going? Or how are you feeling today? And I want to be like, shit. I'm like, nope. Today I'm having a good day. Today's dead. Like, man, today is awesome. And you know what I mean? Even if
my day's shit, my day's shit. Yeah.
Right. But I refuse to say it. I'm like in my pajamas on the couch, which doesn't happen often. Like,
because the moment you say it, you're giving that power to that energy.
And then all of a sudden, you're like
your day's shit.
The couch, and like you're watching some shit series, and you're like, man, the whole day goes. And then the next day, you feel bad about wasting the last day. It's like this perpetual thing. And so I just like refuse to say that. I'm like, I feel good. I feel healthy. I feel great. Whatever. And until I've convinced all of my cells that that's what's happening. Like, today we're happy. All right.
Well, yesterday it was kind of cool to watch those two go through their little learning process together on that live. That was interesting to jump in on. It just goes to show you, even two brothers who are good friends will have those moments.
What a beautiful thing to experience in real time. And I commend Daz for not only like pushing that experience
with grace.
He pushed it forward for us to experience with him, and then showed us a great way to not only deal with it, but to just to practice in our own life. Because I was like, man, there's some great discomfort in calling out a friend or having those conversations, or putting.
They did it like it was nothing, like it was flawless. They did it so well, and yeah, I got to appreciate a guy who can come out of the gate after being bombarded like that to still hold on to that positive. That takes skill, man.
Yeah.
And then to sit there and talk it out like nothing happened. I can't wait till my mindset is where I can do that without hesitation with my friends.
But I feel like you're there. Like, it seems like when you go through these experiences that you're like going through them, but then you're also like, analyzing them at the same time.
In the moment. Totally.
Right. Because it seems like you're like aware of what's happening from like a few different places, right? Like, it's hard to have perspective like as you're going through it, but it seems like you're like, character, first character and third character at the same time, or at least that's what I've kind of understood from like the way that you've explained things. There's no other way.
I'll admit, every shitty moment of my past has defined what I've become in my success. It's really hard to be negative anymore once you embrace just that little bit of positive, because that little bit of positive, once that spark is ignited, and this goes to anybody who's sitting in on this call right now and experiencing this, that little bit, as you've watched over the year with my growth in C.M.C, can turn into a fucking mountain. You just gotta light that flame and not be scared of what may happen.
Yeah, which brings up a really good question. Explain to me how you go from foster care into creating C.M.C. Like, what? Because those things have to be related.
I like that question. I really like that question. Okay, so growing up, I as I mentioned last night, I was a band roadie for 28 years.
Right.
I've always been in the entertainment industry, always, whether it be building stages for Netflix for movies, which was a fun job while it lasted. Uh, $400 a day. I wish I could go back to that.
Damn. All right.
To being the band roadie behind the stage, building the stage for the rock star.
Yeah.
I started doing local concerts for a gentleman by the name of Chris, who ran a company called Sideshow Productions out of Prince George, British Columbia. Amazing boss, awesome human being. And that's eventually what led me to the Roller Dome events that I was talking about. And me getting in touch with a local DJ from back home. And then we ended up talking. Really, it wasn't a place I ever expected to be. We're going to say that right flat out. I was not expecting to be a full-on producer who owns his own not-for-profit label.
Mm-hmm.
I, as a kid, tried to get out there and get shows. And what it boiled down to was I got sick of these corporate clowns. I got sick of these corporate music labels who are taking more than they were giving to the artist when that money and that skill was supposed to go to amping up the artist, making your visuals, doing your music. And these guys were bleeding these artists dry for meager prices. So the idea, and you're going to get a kick out of this. I was literally sitting on the toilet talking to my brother, taking a crap. And C.M.C popped into our minds as a brainchild. He didn't have the power to do it. So I was like, well, do I have your permission to roll with this idea? I think Facebook would be a really good medium to create a worldwide network.
Yep.
And I chose to do everything free because out of all the things I saw between artists, one of the biggest bitches I've seen between the indie scene and all different genres of music, the one thing that remained the same was everybody was getting sick of not moving forward.
Right.
So I took a major chance in the dark. I made the Facebook page with a lady from the US named Carmela O'Brien, who is now one of my 3 on my board of directors for our not-for-profit label. Mm-hmm. And Carmela and me took this onto Facebook. I networked Changing Methods, who you've also seen post variously. And I networked a few close people in Canada who rolled with me in the hip-hop scene. And like I said, year and a half, and I'm at 800 members strong that all talk and support each other.
Yeah, all your posts have like hella interactions on them, and that's what's interesting. Like I've seen pages that have more members but don't have the likes and the comments and the interactions like that. Like I mean, it's a numbers game. It's not a numbers game. Not when it looks like that. Like it really is like a meeting ground for people, and that's what kind of drew me in, because I was like, what is this? And what I appreciated about your name was that it doesn't matter whether you have like 800 or 8 million members. It creates that feeling of like, this is important.
It's connection.
Yeah. And it is important, right? Like, so I was like, man, this is cool. And then as I was watching your content, there was something that kind of stuck with me. And I was like, this person really gives a shit. This is coming from a place of heart. Like, this isn't like, all right, well, I'm just going to like throw a couple of things around. Like, this is somebody who's like blood, sweat, and tears are going into it, that you're like really bringing a sense of community and belonging and understanding that like it is a hard industry that doesn't get enough. I can't say it doesn't get enough bankroll, because there's bankroll in it, but not where it's supposed to be, like you said. And so just to even have like an advocate for musicians, that are someone that's there, that has like a platform that's, for the people, I was like, yeah, that's cool. That's cool. It's really cool.
So it very much ties into, I'm a big activist, and this is also a big part of what plays in C.M.C. I believe in equality. We had a lady who tried to come on here and pull the whole I'm a feminist, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, no, my grandma in the 80s was a feminist. You're what we call a feminazi. You are being selfish, please. And it ended up where she ended up calling a lawyer and having a lawyer contact me, threatening me, because I basically told her I want nothing to do with her on my page if she's just going to slander the people that I'm supporting.
What? But where's what again? This is like goes back to cancel culture. Like, why is she even concerning herself with like what it is? If she's not comfortable there, then like go somewhere else. Then
scroll on.
Yeah, like, you don't even. That's
so
the beauty of
I
it,
asked
like,
that very question, to which I never did get an answer, because she still tried to slander me, not even knowing me at all. She's never met me in life or in talked to me prior to attacking me. And I get it all the time because I do consider myself of the alpha male. I will fight that point. I will, if I know you're being wronged, I don't give a shit what background you come from or what you're going through. I will fight to the bitter end for you to see that you succeed and get the fair justice. It just seemed so natural to shift over to C.M.C, where I was doing it musically, not for let's fight the government type deal, but I was able to make real change real quick in a short time just by sharing something I was fond with. And through that became the birth child of C.M.C music, which I'm constantly expanding.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
So like I said, everything in my past that built up, which is way too much to talk about in one live. Every negative that I went through, I pulled a positive out my ass somehow, because I looked at that negative as a lesson. I was always told growing up, the only true negative is a lesson you don't learn. And the only lesson you won't learn is if you are too afraid to ask the questions.
Ooh.
And I feel government has stopped us from having the voice that humans were meant to have.
But I mean, that's the guy on the corner, right? That's like selling the items at the back of your trunk. Like, we got to bring it back to the streets. Like, that's where it's at right now. We can use platforms like this to like get it out there. I mean, it's great for that, but there's definitely something in like, you know, going to the festivals and, you know, shaking hands and
being able to watch them real life succeed in what they've created themselves.
Yeah, and just being out there and like networking and like advocating for yourself and advocating for your people, and like it's a necessity at this point.
Yeah, for sure. One of the defining moments I had, I was at a rave in Kamloops, British Columbia, and I had no idea that this DJ was going to do it, but he pulled me up on stage and then did this whole endearing monologue about how awesome I am in front of almost 5,000 people.
Wow.
I will tell you, it was something. It was a feeling. Holy fucking emotions. I started crying. I couldn't stop smiling and laughing. Dude was like, "You okay, man?" I'm like, "I used to watch you as a kid. What the hell? Now you're pulling me on stage thanking me for my existence? Huh? What kind of foster kid?" Like, I was so enamored. I didn't know how to deal with it. And then the other cool one was in 2003, which wasn't that long ago. I had Snoop Dogg. I was doing a Snoop Dogg show. We were building the stage for a Snoop Dogg show. And I was out in the back where all the famous people parked their vehicles. And I was bumping my music. I was jamming. And I took my headphone out to notice Snoop Dogg beside me. And he's sitting there bobbing his head to my music. And he's just like, "Who is this?" I'm like, "Me? Why?" He's like, "Wait, what?" And he literally picks my headphones up off my head, puts them on, and starts jamming out, smoking a joint.
Dang.
I'm like, huh? My brain could not comprehend this. He takes the headphones off after the song and he goes, "If this truly is you, you need to keep doing what you're doing."
What?
That was 5 years before I ever thought of C.M.C. But it was one of the moments that led to where I'm at now, because I was really hard on myself being a youth in care. I was very hard on myself, and so hearing that from someone as famous as fucking Snoop, that was a huge like wake up call. This is where that's the defining moment that made me go, I want to do this. I want to be a DJ. I want to be a hip hop artist / rapper and do what these guys do. Mm-hmm. It was because of Snoop. Random conversation that may have happened to anybody on earth, and it happened to little old fucking me.
Man, that's amazing. And you know what? Shout out to Snoop, because he's one of those people that is like that. So that's not the first story I've heard like that. I've gone to a couple of shows, and
Snoop, shout out to him, because he had the balls to do what no other rapper did, and that's rap for his daughter under the guise of a little purple and yellow dog. And he made music for his daughter, and I personally think that that was like the coolest thing ever. What kind of kid grows up and goes, my dad's a professional hip-hop artist, and he's made music for me and many other children like me? Like, what?
Do you remember the Snoop Lion album?
His divulging himself to his Rasta culture. Yes.
And there's a couple cuts where he's saying, no guns allowed. No, how come that song's not playing on regular? No Guns Allowed is like that song. The
US was really harsh about that. They didn't understand that Snoop is actually of Jamaican descent.
Right, but you don't have to be Jamaican descent to be a Rasta. Period. Like you don't.
No. But again, the culture is just full of opinions. Mm-hmm. And they didn't think that someone who was into gangster rap should have been able to do Rasta music was the big thing when he first put it out. I loved the album. Big ups to Snoop on that one, because he wasn't afraid to try something new.
No, and he pulled some big names on there, like Rita Ora and Miley Cyrus are on that album, and like he took a leap of faith with a lot of that. But the thing is that he hour for hour, because he recorded that album down in Jamaica. He spent more time down there in Jamaica, indulged in a culture he participates in all the time, more than some Jamaicans that I know. I mean, so who is he? He already is doing all these things. So why not put out an album about it? Ashtray, I think, is the one that he's with Miley Cyrus. Man,
yes.
That's a great cut, and nobody ever hears it.
Shout out to Miley too, because she lived under the limelight of Billy Ray, which was her dad, and she was able to blossom into her own fucking scene. And not many artists who get stuck being under the limelight of their parents get to have that singularity that I'm an individual artist, because everybody associates your parents with you.
Which is funny, because like I'm not gonna call him a one-hit wonder, but she not only did she totally crush him in the stands, on the charts, everywhere, but she actually continually reinvented herself to stay with the times, because like going from a child prodigy into adulthood is always so uncomfortable.
And when she did Hannah Montana, that was actually based on things she felt in real life. The character Hannah Montana was created off how she felt while she was going through her music career. She wanted to hide away. She wanted to have that alter ego so she didn't have to deal with the stresses of Hollywood.
Well, why wouldn't you? Like, my goodness.
I think it's really cool that she took that negative and was able to create that show and like network with a lot of kids that felt that same way, who had famous parents.
Yeah, that show was deeper than than just being like a
Disney
show. Yeah, totally. Another one is Billie Eilish. And I don't think her brother gives enough credit, because he is part of it. He needs to be out there just as much as she is. But she was another person that not necessarily came out from underneath a parent, but came out from underneath the idea of what you're supposed to look like, right? Like she came out and was like, we're not going to
let alone what you say in a song. She was the first one to take things and go completely R-rated and not have a problem with it. Like
Yeah.
I get why people were so on her, but at the same time, you're always taught growing up that the best way to teach a person is get them while they're young. And she capitalized on that. She took it while she was young. She practiced her ass off, and she made a fucking hit top chart fucking album.
Man, and she did it in baggy clothes, though. That's what was crazy. Everyone was out there looking like Britney Spears, and that girl came out looking like my uncle.
90s swag kid from the side of the street. Yeah.
Right.
No, and I think, like, in regards to what you should be as a musician, I'm so glad that I'm alive to see this generation, because yes, we have a long way to go in human development, but as a race, I think we're more free than we give ourselves credit for.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly.
Any other questions?
Okay, I was just gonna say we should probably wrap this up, although I could have this conversation all night. Yeah, I have
you and me both, and I have time, so
well, I have time slots, but not necessarily all the time. So what my question is like, what do you think is important? What do you think is an important thing for us to do when we talk about mental health and music, when it comes to like advocacy?
Ooh, that's a gooder. Fuck. Well, as artists, I think we need to stop not reaching out to the everyday populace. I know a lot of us get stuck in our social circles, but the main thing, I think you pretty much covered that, is just keep it active, keep it in the conversations, keep it relevant in the now, and always remember to talk it out.
Ooh,
because not many people communicate. This is why your show exists. We need that communication. That's the big one.
That's awesome. Yeah, I agree.
Not just on an artist level, but on a human level. Definitely, we need to remember that we are all here for each other.
Well, on that note, goodbye. No, I'm just kidding. Just
Peace.
kidding.
Jeez, that would have been a hasty exit.
No, I'm just playing. No, on that note, I agree with you. I think that we need to make sure that we're like looking out for one another and put your shit out there. Like, even if it makes you uncomfortable, put it out there. Like,
if people criticize you, just know that it's not coming from a genuine place. They're obviously butthurt about something in their life and too afraid to admit it. For the artists, it's not about the clout. It's not about the fame. As an indie artist, it's about getting up and not being afraid to put yourself out there and be that ongoing person who is constantly able to do that. A lot of artists have issues constantly on a routine basis putting themselves out there. And I exist. C.M.C. exists for all those people who don't have the time to promote their music. I will do it for them free of fucking charge.
That's a beautiful thing. Well, shout out to everybody that is out there doing the hustle and grind and putting themselves out there in a vulnerable place so that we can battle stigma and make sure that mental health stays at the forefront and that the music industry remains the Wild West that it is. And hopefully we can get some traction on healing and maybe putting the money where the money needs to be. Shout out, man. The Dead City Saint is in the house with C.M.C. Thank you so much for coming through. It's been another
pleasure.
Tuesday. You guys stay safe, be healthy, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
Until next time.
Bye.
With the strength of 1,000 elephant and the strength of 1,000 tiger, we stay strong. We stay strong. We stay strong. The further you take my rights away, I'ma run to it. Refuse to hear my voice. Speak loud when I spit it, but you don't get it. You just wanna be a side critic. See somebody else showing hate in the side of the road with it. Now how would you feel standing on the sideline and watch the color of a nation deteriorate over time? The flag real high, but compassion 6 feet below. Now you're searching for that justice that decided to never show. Deny my place, I'm back with a trace. Keep up the pace, tight lace, game face. get back in the race. Whatever they did could never be undone. Every dark night ends with the rising of the sun. Squandered every wealth that's built from the mud. Squandered every wealth that's built from the blood. Squandered every wealth that's built in chains. Stolen from the ancestors, running through my veins.
With the strength of 1,000 lion and the strength of 1,000 giant, please stay strong. Please stay strong.